Hello everyone. This is the second talk we've had jointly with the Arthur Holmes Society. So this is excellent. Hopefully we'll be doing a few more next year as well. Details to be confirmed. But we're Matt and I are members of the Newcastle Mining Institute. This is our where we live up in Newcastle, which is currently being refurbished, which is a bit of another story. But there's lots of stuff going on, and we're very glad that today we've got Phil with this wonderful photo of him definitely not being interred somewhere in a Young Offenders Society, giving a talk on some of the things he did a year or two back. Are you still doing them, Phil?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Yes, so I've heard great things, and really interesting to finally hear a bit more about them. Just a bit of history for those who don't know. The Mining Institute is about just over 150 years old. We were originally founded to aid the prevention of accidents in mines in the northeast. So a number of wealthy mine owners got together and said, well, we can't be having our workers dying in horrendous conditions, so let's see if we can make it better. And they passed down this fantastic royal charter we've got, which actually makes us quite a big deal in the north. We're up there with the learned societies in London, and we're really hoping to sort of expand our activities and get more well known and sort of return to our former glory in a way. We've got lots of events going on. One of us, you're currently attending one of our fantastic talks as we speak, but we also put on a range of in-person events as well, so we're hoping to do some more socials. We've got an annual dinner which attracts men and women from a range of different professions, so if you become a member you can get an invite to that, and this is really good for making contacts and just meeting some absolutely excellent people. And we've also done a field trip to the North Pennines ore field, and we've got a number of field trips being planned, including international ones. So it'd be excellent. If the Poland field trip to see some fantastic salt, copper, and coal mines will take place sometime in the 2020s. This is to be decided yet, current situation. Coming up soon, we've got the Young Person Pledge competition. Alice won it last year in our local heat, went on to do really well in the regional heat as well. So hopefully we'll have some more details coming from IMME about that in the next week or two. And we've got plenty of online lectures. So we've previously had speakers from Durham. We've Katrina Selleck about her work on 3D printing, and just last night we had this fantastic joint lecture with the Geological Society of London and the Paleontological Association on the rise and falls of the dinosaurs. We really did really well with this one, got over 550 attendees, so there's lots of interesting stuff going on. This is available to watch along with a range of other talks, as will this one, on our YouTube channel. Just a few other events coming up in January. Our January lecture is a talk on the geology, mining and narrow gauge railways of New Zealand. And this will also include a bit of an update of what the speakers see in Christchurch and how that's recovered from the earthquake. So there's some interesting geohazards going on there as well. And then in February, we've got a fantastic speaker from Camborne School of Mines, Hannah Hughes, one of the foremost academic economic geologists in the country. She's going to be talking about sort of rocks that go bang. So if you're interested in sort of certainly geotechnical aspects of when you're going down a mine, what sort of safety features you need to look out for, and also how you can use petrology and applied mineralogy to improve mine safety. That's going to be a really interesting one. All the details of our events and lots of other things we get up to are available online, so follow us if you don't already at Twitter. We're on Facebook. Like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great talks. Our professional events are on LinkedIn, and I'm also going to make a bit of a plug for becoming a member. Phil, are you a member? We'll move on. But we're getting more membership applications every month, so we're doing really well, so it'd be great to join in. Just a bit about what this is part of our younger members early career group. There's lots of opportunities to get involved, particularly if you want to help run our YouTube events. but when everything takes place in person again, we're hoping to have more opportunities to go up to do outreach, such as at Celebrate Science. We've previously gone off and done talks on industrial history of the Northeast so it was primary schools somewhere, and the kids love that. So there's lots of things to be involved with. I was on a committee in the Geological Society of London when I was an undergrad, and it's really come in handy in terms of CVs and also knowing how things like this work. So it's also a bit of a career boost as well. How to get involved? Well, just go to mininginstitute.org.uk/membership, fill out one of our membership forms. If you're a student, it's £10 a year. If you're not, then it's £45 a year, but you do get a range of excellent benefits. And if you want to get more involved in our events, just drop me an email at ad2021@cam.ac.uk. And some of the benefits of membership: you can get the very prestigious NEIMME and FNEIMME postnomials, discounts on a range of events and publications, and invitations to our lectures as well. So you can get a Zoom link usually, and you'll be able to ask the speakers in question. And also invitations to the annual dinner. We've got some sporting events and social events we usually put on as well. And also this opportunity to serve on committees. We are the Royal Chartered Membership Organisation for Science and Technology in the North, and being part of it will help drive sort of science and technology policy in the North as well. So that's me done. So on to Phil's excellent talk. So I'll swap over now. And look forward to hearing what you've got to say. So there we are.
Great, thank you. That's very kind of you, very kind introduction. I'm quite glad I didn't wear the same jumper in that photograph that I sent. I'm wearing a slightly different jumper, so that's quite nice. Thanks, Matt invited me to come and give a talk on the prison work. So yeah, thanks. I had fun putting it together. So I run a course called Think Like a Scientist. It is funded by the European Union and a couple of other organisational bodies, and it is a course for those interested in science. It tackles understanding, analysis, and communication. It acts as a kind of a pathway to further education. And for the whole course, there's 7 sessions that last about 2.5 hours each. And it is taught in prison. That's probably the main point of it, why it's a bit interesting, a bit different. Matt asked me to give a little bit of a background of my career history, since this we kind of talk predominantly for undergraduates. So my history is I did my undergraduate in Leeds in 2002, 2006. And then I kind of had in volcanic hazards and geomagnetism. And I had kind of a 3-year period where I kind of went off and did a number of different jobs. I worked in London for a bit. I worked in Newcastle. I worked in France for 2 years, teaching English to French business people. That's kind of where I started to get a bit of a kind of educational bug, as it were. I then did a MSc in the University of Toronto on supercontinents, then followed by a PhD until 2014. And during that time, I was a teaching assistant as well. So I got another bit of a bug of teaching, and I won a teaching assistant award during that time in Toronto. And still in Toronto, I did another couple of years of a postdoc. And by that time, it's kind of like, I kind of want to return home because I am from the Northeast. So I started to do a bit of grant writing and wrote a European Union independent fellowship to kind of try and come back to the Northeast and back to Durham in particular. And in doing that, it's kind of a big thing. To me, it was kind of a route home. I wrote something to do with mantle dynamics and mantle lithosphere and supercontinents. But part of that application, you have to show that you are going to be impactful to the kind of wider non-academic community. And part of that application, it was basically saying, how are you going to share your science to a new audience? So I thought, well, I'm coming home. I might as well do something in the local area. And Durham, it has a cathedral. I thought maybe I could do some sort of outreach with the cathedral, or maybe not. Mainly has a lot of coffee shops. Durham's got a lot of coffee shops. So I thought maybe I could do something related to coffee shops. I mean, there's loads here. There's not even Flat White isn't even on this list. That's how many coffee shops there are. But Durham does have an exceedingly large amount of prisons. There's 3 in Durham. There's HMP Durham, which is right next to the Court Inn pub. There's the women's prison, Low Newton, and Franklin, which is a maximum security men's prison. They're all within walking distance. There's also another one in Barnard Castle, made famous by Dominic Cummins. There's that prison as well, which is Dearborn, which is a young offenders institute. So I wrote into that application that I would essentially piggyback on existing links between the university and the prison to do a science course based on geoscience. That application was successful, so I got kind of 3 years in Durham based on this European Commission. And then I was like, oh, well, I've got to kind of do this now. So I've got kind of 3 years, let's take my time, let's go and just have a bit of a, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it properly. So I actually went and started to listen and try and learn, talk to people, and what you actually need to do to teach in prison. So I had a bit of time to kind of get my skills up, basically. What I found, one of the things that I kind of found through studying is that obviously one of the end goals is for people in prison to come out with a reduced rate of reoffending. Being in employment upon release will massively increase your rate of reoffending. No, reduce your rate of reoffending. So if you're released from prison and go into employment, that is a kind of a big reduction in the reoffending rate. And to do that, what people have said is that being in education in prison is actually a good indicator of being employed on the outside, and again reducing your rate of reoffending. So there was a Ministry of Justice kind of paper that came out looking into prison education programs, whether improve outcomes for prisoners, for people in prison. The problem with that is actually it's not an easy as it says to get people in education. Getting people in prison to get through the doors into education, to formal education, is very, very difficult. It's kind of a long-standing difficulty in terms of probably mistrust, historical, not really wanting to be in school. There's a lot of kind of complex endeavours that go on. So it's quite difficult. It looks easy there, just a kind of a nice little flow chart, but it's actually quite difficult. So that kind of put me off slightly, to be honest, but I kind of continued. And one of the great people I met is Dr. Hannah King, who is a professor in criminology at Durham University, and she's part of the Inside Out Prison Exchange program. If you haven't heard of this program, I would look it up after this talk. What they do at Durham University, they take 2nd and 3rd year criminology students and run lectures inside prisons. Half the class is people in prison, and half the class are 2nd and 3rd year undergraduates. So they actually teach about what is crime inside the prison. Now I got to meet Hannah, and I got kind of involved, and I was allowed to come and sit in and participate in these classes and sit and go to these different prisons, the prisons Low Newton, Franklin, and Dearborn, which is in Barnard Castle. That's not a real Barnard Castle sign, I realise now, but you know, that's where Dearborn is. And I got to sit in. I got to sit in and talk to potential students, people in prison who were taking criminology classes, or people in prison who were part of certain groups that I could access. So I got to talk to people. Again, so that was about kind of 18 months of just chatting. And what I found from just kind of listening and learning is that there are so many people in prison who absolutely love science. It is like if you walk in a prison and say, I'm interested in science, you'll just get a barrage of information coming back at you about what they find interesting. The other kind of things that I picked up from chatting is that any science course, any course in prison has to really be accessible. And that I mean, there's a varying educational ability across the prison population. If you're going to do a course, it has to be kind of encapsulate everyone. Also has to be accessible in terms of the fact that there's absolutely no internet or any sort of, what you have when you walk into a classroom is what you have. There's nothing else. There's no internet whatsoever in prison. Another thing I kind of touched on was a course has to be inclusive, has to be able to bring everyone in under the same blanket and kind of work forward. There can't be any exclusion of any sort. And that can come from basic just language to the use of pronouns, which actually became really quite important, or just being on the same page. Another kind of big part was being relatable. One of the reasons why criminology does really well in terms of people taken in prison is that it's very much relatable to the prison population. They all have a relation to crime in prison, or law. They all have that relation. So that thing does really, really well in prisons. If you were to do a science class, basically you have to make it relatable in some way, which can be quite difficult. One thing that's in terms of relatable, one thing that's also really important is consistency in personnel. You can't keep changing each week who gives a class. If you had in high school, say if you had a different teacher each week, it'd be carnage. Very much, very, very, very similar in prison. You have to have kind of a consistency in personnel. So kind of armed with these things that I learned over 18 months, I thought, well, what is the kind of most accessible, inclusive and relatable thing that I can use to teach? And I don't know about you, but the first thing that comes to my mind is Bill Bryson. What a man. What a book this is. So for those of you not at Durham, Bill Bryson is not just the name of the library, he's also a very well-established author. And he wrote an absolutely fantastic book called The Short History of Nearly Everything, which covers so many different scientific topics. And it's one of the reasons I ended up doing a PhD, is kind of this love of science. If you haven't read it, read it, it's great. Bill Bryson takes us through a short history of nearly everything, right from the Big Bang to kind of present day climate change. It's a really, really good book. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing, because this book is accessible, inclusive and relatable, to base an entire course around this book. So what I wanted to do is kind of put 15 copies of this book in the library and have that as our textbook. And we read a chapter each week and kind of discuss the topic and build on from there. And I thought, oh, you know, I don't know Bill at all. That might not be something that he really intends for a book to be used for people in prison to teach science. So somehow I managed to get in touch with Bill Bryson and talk to him and say, look, this is what I'm doing. And he was like, fantastic, go nuts. This is really good. So I came up with a 10-week outline, each topic based on the chapter of the book, and then taking a scientist each week. Amazing, so good. I literally took the rest of the day off when I came up with that idea of using Bill Bryson's book. I was like, you're not going to get a better idea than that today. Just, go for a walk, you're finished. So I started to write the first week, and I had that outline planned. And I'm still regularly going to meet up with people in prison to talk about the course. And I spoke to someone and said, oh, do you like Bill Bryson? And they went, yeah. And I was like, I'm usually, every time I say, do you like Bill Bryson, there's a kind of really excited look in people's eyes. Say, oh yeah, I read the book, and yeah, it was all right. I really enjoyed it, but it was all right. And I kind of got the impression, this might not be the best idea to base an entire course on a book that I love and loads of people love, but it might not be as accessible. So within 2 weeks of starting the course, I entirely scrapped that. I'm back to just got rid of it, got rid of Bill, had to email him and say, really sorry, I'm not going to use your book anymore, which I felt like a bit of a prat, but it had to be more accessible, more inclusive, and more relatable than that. So what I came up with was something that is just a course that focuses on the way we think. That is the most relatable thing that you can do. Basic things of just how we think in this world. And it's called Think Like a Scientist because the key tenets to being a scientist are understanding, analysis, and communication. If you can do them three things, you're a scientist. And that's what the course is we're talking about. And to make it more inclusive, it would center on the things that we don't know rather than the things that we know. So we have to really focus on, if we don't know something, how do we find that out? Rather than I know this, let's move on. And to build confidence in education, that's kind of the key factor as well, so that we can try and get more people into education, more people into employment, and hopefully reduce reoffending. So what does it take to think like a scientist? Well, the scientific method is shown here. It's kind of a 6-step process. Anyone who's a scientist could stop me if I'm wrong here. First step is you kind of ask a question about the topic. Then you maybe construct a hypothesis on it, and then conduct experiments and get some understanding, and then analyze it, and then eventually communicate it. I mean, this doesn't have to be a big scientific topic. It could just be like, why is my light bulb went out? Okay, I think it's the bulbs, the fuse is blowing. Okay, well, let's conduct an experiment, change the bulb. Is it that? Get an understanding, all that sort of stuff. So in analysis, we kind of get to a point, and then does our research answer our question? No, we go back and conduct experiments. Yes, great, communicate. However, as you all know, 99% of the time, it doesn't work. We still have to communicate that. That's the most important part to me. Most of the things I do as a scientist fails, and no one ever really talks about it. But this is a massive part of being a scientist. And that's what I want to talk about in the course. That failure is 99% of it, and we have to communicate that too. So that was the main part of it. So to kind of pick apart, how would you teach, understand, analysis, and communication in prison? Well, firstly, you've got to have some different topics. So what I want to do is take a different scientific topic each week. The first week is, this is a nice graphic showing someone, this is going to be you, Matt, in a few weeks' time, sleep. Is the first topic is sleep in the class. This is because you could choose something else. You could choose, black holes. You could choose artificial intelligence. I chose sleep because, again, that's the most relatable thing that hopefully everyone does, is go to bed at night. Hopefully, minimum requirements. That is to make the course more relatable, to have that first class on sleep. If you started it with black holes, maybe people wouldn't be interested, and you kind of lose them from there. The first class is really important. Second class is on climate change. The third class is on geoscience. Fourth class is on solar system, mainly missions to Mars. Fifth class is on black holes and the universe in general. That's my dog, by the way, if anyone can hear. Right there, sneezing. I just want to make sure. And the sixth class is on artificial intelligence and robots. The final class is kind of a recap of everything, and we look at kind of some sleep studies that we did at the very start, bring that back towards the end. Now, one thing you might know about prisons is that they are very restrictive in what you can and can't bring in. This is a short list of some of the things that you can't bring in. I'll highlight some of the good ones. Mobile phones, obviously you can't bring in. Any electronic storage devices, any electronic items. Handkerchiefs, can't bring any tissues in whatsoever. So that was a bit of a weird one. As well as the obvious ones like, tattooing materials. Now that makes teaching very difficult. Actually, in 2 of the 3 prisons I've taught at, they didn't allow paper either to be brought in. That makes it, again, very difficult to teach. So what can you do when you can't bring any of this sort of stuff in? Chris Whitty, even though he can't control his own kind of clicker, he has to tell people to do next slides, he still has a PowerPoint presentation to use. But in prison, what I had was basically paper, if I could get it in, and a flip chart, a kind of a whiteboard flip chart, and that's it. That's your teaching tools. So it's that kind of level of accessibility, is that, yes, you can take this absolutely anywhere. You can take it to any prison because it has the most basic, back to basics teaching requirements in there. So what does a kind of a class then look like? Again, one of the kind of things about prison is that you once you're in, you can't really leave unless they allow you to leave. So it could be quite a long day in prison. If you're doing a morning class, you can only move when there's none of the kind of people in prison are moving. So you have to get in before they wake up, and then after lunch. So for a normal class, I would arrive at about 8 a.m., go through the security, and then students would arrive at about 8:45 and then leave at about 11:30. But in that time, that's a good 2.5 hours of teaching that you have to kind of think about and prepare. And to do that, to make it kind of accessible and engaging, I decided to split everything up into 15-minute chunks. So you've got 15 minutes, you've got many things that you've got to prepare for a full day. So the first kind of part of the class is you discuss what happened the previous week, get some information of what they did for the homework. Kind of massive part is 10 o'clock is where you'd have a coffee break for 15 minutes where everyone would sit down and have a coffee and a biscuit. That is really, really important for this kind of inclusivity, to be everyone part of a group. There's no kind of structure between someone in prison and a teacher, that everyone's having a drink together. It became really, really important. And then kind of 11 o'clock to 11:15 a wrap up and homework description. But in between then you've got the biggest part of the class, which is the first part, is where we have the one thing that we have in the class, which is the flip chart. And we talk about what do we know about this week's topic. So what do we know about climate change? And then we'd all discuss it. What don't we know about climate change? And then you'd have the different topics we'd introduce and then discussion on them. So there's quite a lot of things to prepare in 15-minute chunks. So geoscience. So that's kind of what I did as a PhD, is in my studies. I've got 2 or 3, 4 or 5 topics mainly to try and cover in 2.5 hours. Does anyone have any suggestions? I'm mainly looking at the panel here of any topics that you think would be good to cover in a geoscience class.
Yes, the picture shows plate tectonics.
Yeah, would you be keen to let a 15-minute snapshot of that?
That would be tough.
It'd be very tough, yeah. Good suggestion. Anyone else from the panel? What you would think about teaching? Matt, you're on mute. Terrible.
Sorry, Phil. To go local, perhaps look at mining history.
Well, that's a good shout. It's a good shout. What's beneath our feet? Andrew, anything?
Oh,
I tell you what. So
the only thing that comes to mind is optical petrology for some reason. But that's not going to happen.
No, you can't bring a handkerchief in. Dogs in the mood. Well, interestingly, the talk that happened last night would be a really good example of something that you can bring in. Something about fossils, something about dinosaurs, something to really get people excited. So this is what I came up with. Obviously, what do we know about the Earth? We're looking at a 15-minute snapshot of plate tectonics, and then kind of supercontinents and fossils linking in. Volcanoes. How did no one mention volcanoes? Come on. And earthquakes. These are just classic things that you can, just a quick overview of what you want. And to kind of make it relatable, you can talk about a lot of things, but actually one of the craziest things that happened is the 2010, I talk about the 2010 Iceland earthquake, which I can't pronounce. If anyone can pronounce it. Sounds a bit like a sneeze. I can't, okay, no one can pronounce it. But I talk about that.
Is this Eyjafjallajökull?
I can't believe that. No one's actually ever been to pronounce it, but fair play to you. Well done. Well done. Wow. Wow, great. You could have, yeah, good suggestion. I talk about that in the kind of in 15 minutes. And at every prison I've been to, someone has had a story related to that. Because it was such a big global event 10 years ago that someone was either caught up in it or knew someone that was impacted by it. So it does, these sort of things do seem abstract, but you can make them really relatable if you just kind of pick the right topics. Especially that one was something that was 10 years ago now, but it's still fresh in some people's memories. So, okay, so how do you actually gain this understanding and analysis and communication? So the understanding side of things is you, again, want to make it really engaging. So if you're talking about plate tectonics for 15 minutes, what I try to do is make it into almost a TED talk or a podcast. You're trying to have this kind of nice narrative arc to a very short story to get people interested and excited in it. If you can produce a kind of a little podcast, basically, which is interactive for the people in the class, they are really engaged in it, and really kind of, you might not be going into the most high depth detail, but you are getting people on board and you're getting people interactive. In terms of looking at a deeper analysis, I generally use the website called The Conversation, which is where academics write about their current research in a kind of journalistic manner. So it's not as boring as research articles, and it has a bit more of a wider appeal. So for an earth science kind of topic, if you look at Durham University's Gillian Folger, she wrote last year talking about fracking. And if you kind of give this out for people to read, you can then have a very large discussion of, okay, would you have fracking in your town? You know, is your town really unemployed? What would you rather have, jobs or kind of the dangers that go along with it? And you end up getting this analysis again, is what don't you know about a subject? Okay, well, what don't I know about fracking? How can I learn that out more? This is just a kind of tip of the iceberg of where you can start to go in terms of levels of depth. So I would give the students a kind of an article like this, and then give them a kind of a framework of questions to discuss. Okay, so what was the point of the article? What did you think about it? What were you skeptical of? What didn't you really believe? What didn't you understand? Which is that failure aspect where you can't quite understand something. If you don't understand it, what questions do you need to ask to get that level of understanding, and what could you do to find out more? And then to get communication, I'd try and give them a 2-side maximum to write about it. Just write about, put some things down on paper, give your opinions on it, just anything basically. Again, this is not a formal education class. You're not going to get a grade at the end of it. It's just a way to essentially build communication and build confidence in education again for people who very much did not believe that science is for everyone, and did not believe that education is for everyone as well. But again, you're going off a paper and pen and a white flip chart. So a lot of it is communication. A lot of it is dialogue based. You're asking questions, you're getting it back. You're not really sitting down doing exams. You're having a dialogue. And despite the fact it seems that wouldn't be that impactful, it can really be, because the students are essentially really hungry for education. Amazingly, they're really, really interested in science. So an example, I was going to give you an example of one of the homeworks that I got from a student. So one of the homeworks that I set was from this James Cockrell book called Life Beyond, where he set an assignment where you're working on the space station in Mars, and you're going to have to write an email home. So it's kind of this mixture of art and science. So no more 2 pages, what do you have to say? So I give a kind of a podcast, almost a TED talk on Mars, and give some information about space missions to Mars. And this is one of the responses that I got back from a student called Sheila. I'll just read you it, because it's really quite incredible. This is their homework, this is their email. So it says, "Hi Mum, this is my first message from the surface of Mars. We landed early this morning and set foot on a planet in time to see the sun rise over our new home. The day has been busy, setting up a habitat and ensuring there were no leaks was our priority. It should be pressurized by the morning, then moving over all the gear and supplies to be completed. I was grateful that the gravity here is just 1/3 of the Earth's, as some of the loads were quite large and surprisingly heavy. It's strange to have weight again after 9 months of weightlessness after traveling to Mars. The surface is very dry, and the boots of our EVA suits kick up quite a lot of dust. We can see that being a problem for the airlock filters." Just that paragraph in itself is just incredible. There's so much detail that's got in just to talk about it. Even I love the fact that you can see the dust hanging in the air because the gravity's not the same. It's really, really cool. This next line is fantastic as well. The stars here don't twinkle as they do on Earth. This is due to the thin atmosphere. Brilliant. Fantastic. There are 2 moons in the sky. I'm looking forward to pointing our telescope towards them tomorrow. We have landed and set up our home near a cliff face, which looks like to be made of layers of sedimentary rocks streaked with black and white, possibly basalt and gypsum. What more do you want, Andrew? This is proper geology, this. With the overall colours ranging through white to orange red, with an occasional flash of either hematite or iron oxide. Wow, fantastic. Pete and Dave, our geologists, can't wait to get out and take samples. Mars's 25-hour day gives us an average of 40 minutes more light. In England, that would be 40 minutes more rain. Solar panels are connected in the comm system set up, although the satellite dish took all of us to open as it stuck in transit. The problem proved to be a trapped wire. Emma reckons the vibration moved it. Well, Mum, Emma says if I set up this now, we'll get there quicker as we're in the line of sight for Earth for the next hour. Right soon, love, Sheila. Amazing, absolutely amazing. This is the sort of level of work that you get just from kind of a bit of discussion and allowing people to kind of express themselves in a different way. And that's kind of is come from having things being accessible and inclusive and relatable. They have been able to kind of tackle that kind of head on. That's kind of not the end of the story in terms of how the course moves. One of the massive things, again, is what I said, is actually getting people through the door into education. And I saw this course as a stepping stone rather than a formal education process. So how do you even get people through the door? How do you get people to sign up for a course? One, you kind of have to be creative with a lot of different things. So if you want to have a teacher class that's in a classroom like this, you're not going to get the people who you want to come into this door for this class. When I look at this room now, and I didn't before I took this course, I have to say that this course has entirely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And I came into this with enthusiasm for education, but not anywhere near the level that it should have been to teach this course. I had to learn a lot. But now when I see something like this, I see a kind of classroom that would not be accessible to a lot of different people based on their historical difficulties with education. I also see hardwood floors. You probably don't see that, but that is a huge component. A lot of people don't go into education rooms in prison because of the hardwood floors, because it makes the noise. A lot of people have kind of sensory issues, and having a carpeted floor like in the library really brings a lot of people in that you wouldn't usually get in. So we were quite creative with the different places that we would teach, one of them being in the library. Durham County Council have phenomenal libraries and prisons, and this is actually not a shot from Durham, any of the prisons, just so you know. There's not a kind of a mix. This is just a shot of a library that I could find that has a carpeted floor. Although half of the room, I realize now, is hardwood floor. But you kind of might get the point that to have it in a setting that's not a classroom was really important. We had the first class I ran in Lower Newton in the women's prison was in a kind of, I know it was a lot of sofas. It wasn't a room that you would, it was a breakout room almost. There was sofas. It wasn't in anywhere near the education block. When I ran it in Dearbolt, the young offenders, we did it above the gym. It wasn't even in the education block. And when I ran it in a maximum security men's prison, we run it in a library. Again, the reason being to try and get more people through the door. And that task of it being relatable is quite hard. Again, one of the things that one of the students said to me in the preparation was like, look, we can watch documentaries. You need to have something that kind of brings people in that they will stick around for, and to be able to attach to their lives. And that was quite a difficult task, but actually in some ways it was quite easy, because you can find things in science. Science is for everyone basically, and you can relate to it in any walk of life. One thing that came up which was incredible was the relationship between a person in prison and an astronaut, which has come up in 2 or 3 classes. And this is a quote from a Canadian astronaut talking about the difficulties of being an astronaut. The problem you develop here is that everything is a little bit the same every day. It can be depressing sometimes if you're not careful. That's prison. It's also now, to be honest, as well, in lockdown. You're very far away from people that you love on Earth and that you can make you sad, perhaps, said Saint-Jacques. Though astronauts are separated from significant others on their home world, they never have any time alone on a space mission. This is kind of a key point. You're always with the same people on board. So if conflict arises, you have nowhere to go. You have to face it. So it's a challenge. This is, again, prison to a T. Spending time learning how to communicate with colleagues is the key to our success, and we can't function well, of course, if you're not happy and you can't be happy if you're not getting along with the people around you. That really struck a chord with people in prison, and they were pretty much saying, we'll all sign up to go to Mars. If you want volunteers to go, we have excellent skills. We can do it for months or years even. This is the key thing. So the kind of key point about this is that communication, to be able to communicate what you're thinking, to be able to communicate with your colleagues. And that is not only applicable to people in prison and to astronauts, but applicable for all walks of life. To be able to communicate with the people around you is number one. And that's something that I took away from this course. So feedback, got a lot of feedback from the course, from the students. One of them being, my mind does feel like it's expanded. I no longer feel like the stupid kid that never holds their hand up or holds their breath when the teacher asks a question. That's kind of, well, it's amazing, basically. The course has given me more confidence and made me understand the world and the universe around me in a different light. So it's kind of trying to bring people in to kind of think things differently, and to kind of build confidence in education. I'm gaining a sense of confidence academically I never thought I had in me. The idea of reviewing ideas and a thirst for knowledge. The best part of the course was the group interaction, which was good because couldn't do anything else because there was nothing to share. And yeah, it allowed everyone to express their views and discuss them. Again, these were things that really tried to bring everyone on board. The course was featured in won a few awards and featured in a few papers. But the best one, I think, was from a former student called Dalton, who has subsequently been released and actually came to Durham to give a talk. Dalton, I met him in the female prison in Lower Newton. He's a trans man who was in prison and took the course that I ran. And because it was inclusive and because it was accessible, he really took it on board. And he wrote about it for Inside Time magazine, which is a paper for people in prison. Once he was released, he's been released now about 18 months. And it was called "I Found My Freedom Studying Science in Prison." And he said that science taught me to connect ideas, take notes, create plans, and figure out routes. It showed me that scientists will take a chance, and if it doesn't work, they'll find another way and another way. That you can build ideas through other people's work and add on, develop teamwork, build on failures and achievement, but above all, learn to keep going forward. I mean, that is science, but I mean, that's what the course wanted to do. And Dalton's doing fantastically. He's actually publishing his first book of poetry next week, and is signed up to do a course at Leeds University actually. So he's doing really well. So yeah, so that's the class basically. Think like a scientist. What I would say is that these kind of three things that I learned to kind of spending 18 months talking to people can be applied pretty much anywhere in anything that you do, and it has totally changed the way I do any presentation. Basically, if you make it accessible, inclusive, and relatable, you open up so many more doors, and you get so much more impact in what you've done. And basically, what can you do in your work to have these three things? And we have to really make sure that science is for everyone, because we can quite easily, if we kind of make it elitist almost, we ruin it. And we have to make sure that science is for everyone. And hopefully by doing these three things. So yeah, that's it. That's all I've got. There's a million people I have to thank, so I'll just put this up. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Phil. That was absolutely fascinating. If you're okay, we could probably take some questions from our attendees. Is that okay with you, Phil?
Of course, yeah, anytime.
Yeah, great. Okay. So attendees, if you could either raise your hand and I will give you permission to talk, or you can type your questions into the Q&A. There should be a Q&A function for you.
Is it? It's exciting. Oh,
yeah, I know. Sorry, Phil.
Don't know what I was going to say.
All right. Okay.
If there's no other questions, I can talk about future work as well. But
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I was wondering whether you ever attended the sessions where the Durham criminology students went to, and it was like the half-half class.
Yeah, I attended a lot of them actually, and that was really incredible.
Was it?
What was it like? Well, that was a real eye opener in terms of accessibility and inclusivity, because you obviously have this kind of odd situation where you have second and third year Durham undergraduates in criminology are mostly female as well. It's like 90% female in some cases a maximum security men's prison, with people who are all over 30 mainly. So it's striking when you walk into it. But I generally came into the later classes, so it's 11 weeks. They do this for 11 weeks, and by kind of week 2 or 3, they are proper students. You wouldn't be able to, if you're just to kind of close your ears, you wouldn't be able to tell. Everyone kind of is on board, and it's amazing. They work. The class is set up in a circle, again, so that no one is identifiable as kind of a leader, and they sit kind of inside student, outside student, inside student, outside student, all by one. So everyone is sat next to someone who's like they're not usually sat next to, and that kind of gives it a community feeling basically. And then they have a lot of discussion based on that. It's incredible. That blew my mind. That I got a lot of really. So that something could be done basically in prison based on that powerful work. Have you met any students who've done it, Alice?
Yeah, my second year housemate. She's a criminal student.
Oh, great. I don't know what she thought of it, but the students I talked to about it said that totally changed their perspective of university, because for that 2.5 hours that you're in that class, you don't have your mobile phone, you don't have your laptop, and you're just kind of present basically. You're talking people one-to-one, looking in their eye, and that is something that often gets lost in education, especially higher education, because you can be sit on your phone, you can catch up later on the lecture, but when it's present and it's one-on-one, you have to be there. So it was so powerful, and it's incredible. It's a shame that it's not open to everyone, really.
Yeah, it sounds like such a good opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks, Imogen. So the question of Imogen says, did you ever run into difficulty with people not wanting to participate in the sessions or not engaging? Yes, I did. There was one, usually you have to kind of keep people on board. You've got to kind of watch what everyone's doing, kind of get the feel of the room. And then there's this one person that when you just look at someone and realize that they're not engaging, and it's really difficult. And I got kind of, I didn't mention it for the first week. I didn't mention it the second week. And then the third week, I kind of plucked up, I had to facing your challenges head on and communicating. And I kind of just asked that, okay, is there something that I can help with? And we kind of started to talk, and it basically, there was a few things that he just didn't understand and didn't want to kind of engage in that way. And then the next week he came in, I kind of asked him, okay, well, write down the things that you didn't understand. And he came in with a list of 25 bullet points from the past 3 weeks of questions that he had. And I was like, well, he wasn't engaging. He just didn't, he had questions that he wanted answers to, basically. So I spent the next essentially full week answering all these 25 questions. And then after that, it was a lot better. But you've just got to be able to kind of watch the room. This is why it makes something like this really difficult. Like, you can't see everyone. It makes it quite difficult to kind of get that interaction. You have to become quite astute to it. I just watch Matthew, kind of what he's doing, and that gauges my room for my view. Ask if this type of initiative will continue. Well, funnily enough, not funnily enough, during lockdown, what has happened is that all of the education providers in prison have been taken out, and that most of the people in prison are under lockdown for quite significant amounts of time with no access to education. So for the past 6 months or so, I've been providing worksheets to prisons that they can print off and distribute to the prison population, so that they can have something like this in education form for the whole prison. So instead of going in, it's been kind of delivering workbooks that they can distribute, just to give them something to do, basically. I would like to go back into prisons, and I'm hoping to do it, but as you can probably imagine, at the moment, prisons are more strict than the general population in terms of lockdown initiatives. So I don't know when that's going to be, and I don't know how long it'll take. But in the meantime, kind of teaching in the dark in terms of producing worksheets to send to prisons around the country. It's very odd. I don't quite like it, but what can you do?
Can I ask a further question on that? If you're sending in these workbooks, do you know if they're working through them solo, or whether they're discussing them in groups? And
this is the also difficult thing, is that there's absolutely no feedback, because even education, I can't say that. No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether I know that it's been received well. I don't know how they're working through it. It depends on the prison, actually, in what their situation is. I can't get any material back because no material can leave. So I can't get any of the work that I'm hoping that I don't get, 20,000 two-page assignments on Mars when lockdown ends. I'm hoping that, but yeah, so it's difficult. It's different. I mean, education in prison now is basically stopped. Thanks for the question, Imogen. Yes, hopefully, yeah, exactly. Hopefully face-to-face soon. We'll return soon, and hopefully education providers will come up with something as well, even if it's online or something like that. Something has to change now. If you think what it's like at Durham University for education, it's very different in prisons in terms of online courses. Like that. Even people doing open university still, up until very recently, were sent huge wads of paper through the mail to try and do further education courses.
There's a question from Paul in the chat, and Sean's also got his hand up to ask a question. So do you want to tackle Paul's question first, and then we'll come to you, Sean?
I can't see it.
Can you not see it? I'll read it out to you then, if you can't see it. Is there anything that you have learned from teaching on this project that has made you think should or could be changed in school education?
Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah, definitely. Actually, yes. So I was asked to. There's a couple of schools that have asked for me to teach this course in high schools, mainly for students who aren't engaging. To give them something different. This course acts as a stepping stone to formal education. So if you have people who aren't engaged in formal education, maybe because of that classroom setting, this course has been asked to be provided in schools in place of that, basically, to provide that kind of stepping stone. That accessibility and inclusivity is key, basically. It's not going to work for everyone, because a lot of students kind of can work well in there. You're looking at people who aren't doing well in school, aren't engaging. This is the course that I hope that may be able to provide it for them. So in that case, yes, that's what I would try. These sorts of change in scenery, keeping it communication based, focusing on failure, basically. That's what I would really focus on in schools with people who aren't engaging.
All right, Sean, I've just asked you to talk.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I just to go on from what you were saying there as well, as it's like a stepping stone into education. Is there much support in like applications for like the students going into like formal education, maybe after uni or sorry, maybe after prison or like during prison? Is there like the assistance there as well, or?
There's not much assistance after release. There's certain groups. I write references and things like that, so that kind of helps. But yeah, that's the kind of difficulty thing. Once people have left prison, there are still a lot of things you can do for education in prison and in employment in prison. After the fact, there's a lot of it left to their own devices, to be honest. So hopefully that might change with more support groups. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Perhaps it's probably time to call it for today's session. So Andrew, is there anything you want to say to wrap up?
No, not in particularly. Just thanks again to Phil. It's sad to see that Bill doesn't work in all situations, but oh well.
He might have done.
He might have, maybe in person. But yes, I mean, it's excellent talk. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I hope it can take place in person again as soon as possible. And also, I think it's sort of, certainly from my own experience of doing a bit of lecturing in other universities, it's don't write people off or dumb things down, because people just seem to have this innate interest in learning new things. I think if you give them the opportunity, then as you do, they take an interest, which is great to see.
Definitely.
So excellent. Well, we'll leave that there. All the best to all of you. I say it's just slightly too soon to potentially wish you all a Merry Christmas, but there we are. Excellent. Hope we'll work something else out with Alice and see what we can do for next year as well. But good to see you again, Phil. And there we are.
You too, Andrew.